Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the NDA podcast. Thanks for all your support so far and for coming back every Wednesday to listen. If you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe so you're never going to miss us. Leave a review, find us on socials, whatever you need to do to let us know what you think of the season so far. So, this week has been very highly requested. At this point, I reckon we've had at least 100 DMs asking us to cover this topic since the start of the podcast. So today we're going to be talking about whether the creative industry supports or discriminates against parents, new parents specifically. It is a loaded topic. I'm going to try and ask some really tough questions. So things that we're hoping to cover: if you decide to start a family, will your career just come to a halt? Why is it so hard to return to the industry once you've had a baby? Are those experiences forcing women out of their roles? How does being a new parent impact your creativity or the ability to run a successful studio? I'm super excited to chat about that one because that feels like something that's not that often discussed. I just want to kind of caveat that there are thousands of very different nuanced experiences of juggling parenthood and work, different ways of getting pregnant, just different experiences in general. So there's no way we'll be able to cover everything today. We're going to give it our best shot. Joined by two amazing guests. I'm so grateful for their time today. So they're going to get to share their point of view. I'll let them introduce themselves. Rachel, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and super excited to be talking about something that's so highly anticipated. So I am Rachel Allison. I go by the pronouns she, her. I founded an agency called Axe and Saw, which is very much a storytelling, progressive PR agency. And I am coming to this topic as a mother of a nearly 7-month-old baby girl. And I'm coming sleep deprived as well. So bear with me, but that's really authentic. So there you go.
Yeah. Awesome. Laura, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks for having me again. I mean, you feel privileged, but I'm terrified by that introduction. The fact that this is a highly requested topic puts a lot of pressure on, especially equally sleep deprived Rachel. But my name's Laura Randall. I am a creative director. I'm returning from maternity leave from my second child. I've got a 4-year-old, and yeah, my youngest is 1 and cutting molars. So it's all fun over here.
I feel like we need to do like a shout out to the Sprogs section in this episode.
I'm not talking to my 1-year-old at the moment, so maybe not.
We won't dedicate the episode to them. So you know me by now. I'm Katie Cadwell. I'm your host. My pronouns are she, her. I'm going to be putting some of our listener stories to our guests today. And actually I want to kick off with a story that it's kind of was the catalyst for us going, okay, now's the time to cover this topic. So I'm just going to play a voice note from Emma Watson.
I was a senior creative, an art director. I'm from New Zealand. I've just had my first baby. I'm on mat leave at the moment. I worked in London for 5 years as a freelancer and also did a perm role. And then came back to New Zealand, worked a bit more in advertising, but then was thinking about having kids and then just didn't see any way really that advertising would support. Didn't feel like it's not a supportive industry for mums, and didn't really know many senior female creatives who have had kids and then stuck in the industry or had flexible working once their baby was born. So I got out of advertising and I've gone in-house and I'm working at a software company.
So the reason I wanted to kick off with that today is because I think importantly is Emma has chosen to essentially leave the industry or take a sideways step because she felt like the combination of the creative industry and her being a parent, they just didn't work together. There's been a study carried out by the charity Pregnant Then Screwed, I think name clue in the title for what they're passionate about. And it revealed that over half of mums, which is 52%, have faced discrimination when pregnant, on maternity leave, or upon returning to work. 1 in 5 have had such negative experiences that they've left their jobs as a result. So absolutely staggering figures, to be honest. So I want to explore, today we're going to explore why we think that is. And I wanted to start with pregnancy, if I could chat a little bit about what your experience was like of being pregnant and how that impacted your kind of working life. Laura, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So my first pregnancy was very unplanned. It came as a massive shock. I actually did the test in the work toilet and then had to... thinking, oh, I'll just do it, just to put my mind at rest. Was doing my hair in the mirror, not thinking anything of it. Looked down, saw it, and was like, oh my God. I then had to leave and go into a meeting. And I just was, I looked shell-shocked. I remember a friend coming up to me saying, are you okay? And it was crazy. But I actually, personally, my experience was that my work was very, very supportive. I luckily that time around had a really easy pregnancy, but then going into my second pregnancy, it was a very different story. I had a crazy experience with him. I keep saying that he sucked the life out of me then, and he's sucking the life out of me now. Like, of course, I love him more than anything. But he's been a challenge, a great challenge. But I actually I was looking for work when I found out I was pregnant with him, and I had accepted a job at Iris. I then found out I was pregnant, and I thought, wow, no way are they going to want to hire me. I was really frank with them, and I said I'm pregnant, and really incredibly, they said, we'd love to hire you still, and we'd actually love to give you a very small, but still a really very kind and generous maternity package of a couple of months' pay, which was incredibly kind. I really can't thank them enough for that. And I know that compared to a lot of the stories that I've been hearing around, that is very different to what I've been hearing. But I know that they were very keen to do that, very keen to support me. I would say that then my experience then, unfortunately, was that I was then so ill during my pregnancy. I had anemia and low blood pressure. I was continually fainting. The last few months I was just breathless, bedbound, but I had to lead a pitch at the same time, because of course I do. I'm a CD, like that's my job, and they hired me. And it's situations like that where I felt an insane amount of pressure, because you don't want to let people down. People are relying on you. It was in that time of intense growth where agencies were struggling, everyone was battling, and redundancies were constantly on the horizon post-COVID. So we had to win these pitches, and it felt like a lot of pressure on me, whose health was incredibly poor at the time and energy levels were very low. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I was incredibly fortunate. I had really, really positive experiences with both of my pregnancies and both of my employers, but still it still really wasn't enough, because the pressure that you're put under is huge, and it's I don't know what the answer is, but it was still incredibly challenging.
Rachel, how did you find being pregnant, and did it have an impact on work and your working life? I mean, I didn't equally plan necessarily for the pregnancy. And mine's slightly different because I run my own business. And I think when you run your own business, it's been going 3 years now, it's quite dependent on you driving things forward. And while I had growth plans and scaling plans, I very much saw myself central to all of those things. So it was kind of, I say it's like it was the most joyous moment in my life, but equally professionally one of the most harrowing and scary moments. Like, I knew I was really happy that I was pregnant, and I wanted that. But then I thought I had no clue how I was going to navigate the other part of me, which is my other baby, which is my business that I've poured my heart and soul in for the last couple of years. So I was definitely really scared. I've worked for quite a few female founders in my career. And I'd seen how clients had treated them, and clients had left the business or made quite scathing comments behind their back. When I started the business, one of the clients who I worked with at one of my prior agencies said, now the other two are out of the business, that company's kind of gone to shit essentially. So we want someone young and fun and gets it. And I was like, yuck. So I had all of these kind of preconceptions and experiences myself without being pregnant, and I was kind of dreading it, I'm not gonna lie. But then in classic me form and resilience, and you run a business, you can't really do anything other than put one foot in front of the other, and I kind of just was quite lucky, to your point, Laura. Like, it was quite an easy pregnancy. I hate saying the word easy because, like, it's literally not easy growing a human. My organs are moving around, etc., etc. But like, I wasn't bedbound or anything, and I very much worked until pretty much I was in the hospital bed. Classic me as well, which all my friends definitely took the mick out of me for. But what I would say is, like, I didn't really show until like 7 months, and I was getting into all of these meetings and pitches, and I was so wary of how they would receive me going into a pitch, being the founder of an agency with a big bump. So a lot of the time I was walking around in baggy clothes and kind of making sure that I was presenting the wider team as much as humanly possible. And on the flip side to that, I have a list of clients already who I wanted to make sure didn't feel like the soul of why they signed up was disappearing because I was about to have a baby. I think to that point, I've been quite lucky in the way that I've positioned the agency and the way that I've attracted the clients that we work with. Everyone is progressive, and they understand that I'm juggling things and that I'm doing my best, and I will always deliver the best results I physically can. So again, to Laura's point, like, I've not had the most horrible experience, but it's still hard. So I feel very much like my brain's about to give up. Don't know how to finish that sentence.
I think that is pretty much a fairly universal experience, and there aren't many like universal moments in something like this, as nuanced as this. But so another statistic we've got is that 83% of women felt they had to put on a brave face at work when they were struggling with issues relating to pregnancy. So I guess, what are we scared of? Are we scared that our team is going to panic? Are we scared that clients aren't going to sign big projects with us because we're about to leave? Are we worried that people are going to perceive us differently because we want a family? Like, why are we hiding that we're pregnant or kind of diminishing that experience at work?
I mean, I think we're scared of every single thing you've listed. And I think as a society, we don't actually respect the journey of becoming a mother. Like, I think that is, in a nutshell, the problem here. Like, if our society was set up, and I mean this like as like holistically as I possibly can, but to embrace the journey of becoming a parent, not even just becoming a mother, I think our attitude would shift dramatically. Like, I know for a fact, pre being a mother, I didn't know half the things that mothers around me were going through. And it's just unspoken. You just see, like, you always hear mums joke being like, oh, lack of sleep. And you're like, nah, well, good on you. Here you are. And, you're still plodding through, and you forget it instantly when you're not a mum. Only when you're in the situation do you actually understand the level of like deprivation, how hard it was for you to get up in that morning, commute into the office, present, deliver, motivate everyone, drive everything. Like, it is just so swept under the rug, and we just don't actually allow as a society for us to breathe and like even dwell or like understand the emotive, physical things that are going on for a parent and a mother. So I feel like it's a societal issue, and obviously I will bang on about it being very patriarchal, but we don't need to go there
yet. Oh, but we will.
Let's go.
I'm sure we will touch on the patriarchy at some point in this conversation.
Laura, what do you think? Why do you think that the kind of default is to sort of push it to the side and put on a brave face and wear a baggy t-shirt and keep calm, carry on?
It's really interesting because I remember being a junior and being scathing, well, not scathing, but I remember judging mums. I remember there was a mum who was always leaving at 3:30, and I remember being like, well, that's not fair. Why does she get to leave? Why can't I leave? Like, I've got to go out tonight. I've got to go get my nails done. Like, I was so ignorant, and I was, just so blissfully unaware of what she was going through. Or potentially she would show up a bit late, and I'd be like, well, I'm here on time. And I now look back at that person, I'm like, wow, you were an awful person. But I just didn't know, because no one talked about it. Like, I was oblivious of the fact that she had probably no sleep that night. Getting her kids to nursery or school had been an entire working day before she'd even sat down at that desk. And I just think it's you're very aware that even though I think the industry is trying to be progressive, I think you're very aware that 90% of the people you're working with don't have kids, and if they do, then they're a dad and they're not quite coming at it from the same angle as you. So my experience throughout advertising has been that I'm working with 20-year-olds who in their 20s and not having children. All their fathers. So I know that they're thinking the thoughts that I used to think, and I'm very aware of that, and I'm scared of it. And it's a horrible thought. So you're trying to put on a brave face, and you're trying to not be that mum. But we are that mum, and we are going through it. And I don't know I don't know how we're meant to educate people on the depths of how hard it is. Because exactly like you said, Rachel, like, I remember a friend of mine she put something on Instagram the other day, or when she was pregnant, saying, can someone tell me some good things about being a mum, please? I feel like all anyone tells me about is the tiredness. And I know I'm going to be tired. And I remember reading that, and I was like, I can't wait to talk to you in about 6 to 8 months and see how all consumed you are by that tiredness, because it's not just us whinging. It's not just us being like, oh, but we're so tired. Like, it is debilitating, and you can't see straight, and you're emotional, like you cry all the time, and yet you still have to show up at work and be the boss and be impressive and be really clear-headed, and also be able, sometimes if I'm looking at a pitch, I'm having to look at all these ideas which to me are just mess, and my head's a mess, and yet I have to be the one to be like, right, let's formulate a plan, let's do this. And how am I meant to be able to do that when I can't even hang my laundry up? Like, it's baffling to me. But it's that saying, you're meant to parent like you don't work, and work like you don't parent.
See, that's really interesting. That was going to be my next point. You're both kind of saying that, there's not enough real empathy and understanding, yet you are putting on a brave face. So are you perpetuating that a little bit by kind of
100%? Yeah, 100%. This is why I think conversations like this are really important. Like, I literally was just speaking to someone being like, the creative industry as a whole is obsessed with youth. Let's just start there. Like, the younger, the cooler, the spritier, the later the nights are, the everything. Like, and you kind of get pulled into that industry when you're young, being like, that's me, that's a bit of me. And then we don't really graduate from that thought process. And as soon as you said, Laura, like, when you're in that headspace where you're just like, go, I'm really career focused, all that jazz, it is so uncool to be like mumsy, like talking about your nursery run, talking about the kids getting their food on you. Like, it's like the epitome of like writing yourself out of a job, essentially, in the creative industry. So you are forced into silence where you're not allowed to talk about the like mucky, uncool like stuff. And actually, I think this is like to the point about sleep, is like that's the only thing that's like acceptably okay to talk about. Let us not talk about breastfeeding and your tits leaking randomly in a meeting, or like, all the other uncool things that happen. Like, the only thing that we've just about been able to talk about as a society is that you lack sleep, and like all of the other things around it are just like, again, silenced into the background. And it's like, it's a safe space for mums to be like, hey, we're in this together, but there's so much other things that we're not talking about. And that's what I feel like, yes, we are perpetuating it, but that's why these convos have to happen.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Already we've got so much good chat, and I've got so much to get through. So let's move on quickly to talk about mat leave. So I guess the question is, like, how long did you take? How was it? Did you find it really easy to switch off? So a temptation to keep on working? Did you lose like steam and creativity? I guess just a little bit about how was your mat leave, not from a point of view of how was it having a baby, but how was it in terms of in comparison to what you'd just come from and knowing that you had to go back there?
I think touching on it from a financial perspective, it's just really unspoken about how impossible it is to, in this day and age as well, during a cost of living crisis, to be living off one wage. Or even if you're a single parent, I don't understand how you're meant to do it. I can't even comprehend that. So yeah, in the back of your mind, you're always thinking, I want to take a year. Whether that's feasibly possible, it is another story. So yeah, constantly you're thinking, right, I need to start thinking about getting back to work. I need to start thinking about getting back to work and getting some money in. But yeah, like at the same time, you're still breastfeeding, you're still covered in milk, your child is still waking up 20 times a night. So yeah, it's constantly in the back of your mind, because you can't relax into it, because very few of us are in the financial position where maternity leave is a blissful experience where you're not stressing about money. I would also say that you want to keep your head in. Like in a year, an entire social platform could be introduced, and you don't even know about it. You don't want to come back and be that person who is totally oblivious to Reels or Twitter changing to X, like all these little things and how they work and how they function and what is it Gen Z are into now. Like, you need to keep on top of all these things so that you're not, like Rachel says, the mumsy mum who has just taken a year out and is so oblivious. So yeah, it's you can't completely relax into it, because the fear is that you'll take a break and you'll come back and you'll be out of touch and you'll be left behind.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. My mat leave was probably, I'm going to say 6 weeks, I reckon. So saying that, it's quite different to going back into someone else's company than like going back into your own. Like, it felt very weird to be completely out of touch of what was going on in the team and the clients and everything else. And it was really hard to let go, I think, but equally I didn't really have the headspace to be in it that hard. So I had at the end of every week, Harriet, who was running it at the time, would come over and just like give me a little rundown, and was so mindful of making it like the most shiny rundown in the world. And I was like, wow, everything's so great without me there, just like in a complete little cocoon. And then I like was getting like, just seeing the odd thing, and I just started to trickle back into it, but kind of like did it all from home, did it during a nap, just checking in on emails, like took it quite slowly, she says, after 6 weeks. A year would be much slower, of course. But I would say you're completely right, Laura. Like, it's this fear of not being on top of everything. Like, our job is almost dependent on being at the forefront of what's happening. What are the trends? Who's engaged? It's an always on job being in this space. So for you to actually think about taking a year out feels so scary, especially when you're like in control of leading people and a vision and everything else. It's even more daunting. Like, I don't know how I would be able to do it differently. And I would say that when I spoke because I didn't really see out there that there was a lot of founders who were running an agency who had a baby at this kind of age range. They'd already done it, so their kids were like 15 or whatever, and like I obviously spoke to them. But in this like new mum age, I hadn't seen many examples, and I was like, why is there no examples? Oh yeah, because everyone's still working through it, and no one actually wants to talk about it, because you don't want to lose clients, and you don't want to make this narrative about you just being a mum and no longer being head in the business. And so it was quite hard to actually find those people to have an example, to see representation. And one of the people that was really amazing is Lucy Werner, who I remember being completely nowhere near the age of even thinking about having kids. Well, that was only like 3 years ago, really. She went on stage and she did a talk and she breastfed her child. And my friend, who was older, posted it and was like, this is what motherhood needs to look like more, because there's no way of you being able to juggle both without this having to be a reality. And I was like, wow, that is so strong. I cannot believe she did that. I want to be that type of mum when that time comes for me. And we ended up chatting randomly, and she was just so insightful in terms of like how I could show up as a founder. She also said that it didn't quite work for her, like maintaining this business life and having all the kids. So I was like, okay, I'll skip that bit for now. But she really said that you just have to be quite bold with your intention and how you want to be a mum and how you want to be a business owner, and actually let people squirm if they need to. That's not your problem. And I was like, that, like, for me, that was like inspirational in terms of how I could move forward in this space post mat leave. Like, and also she was like, yeah, you have to be in it, but you actually aren't in another person's space. Like, you can leave at 3 p.m. and you can be really punchy about it and say, this is what I want to do, get over it, it's my business. And I think I still battle with it because I've worked for other people for so long, to be like, I need to show up exactly the same as everyone else. I don't want anyone else to feel like I'm leaving them in the lurch. But like, I have to afford myself that luxury. Like, I try and afford that for everyone else in the team, and I need to be flexible with myself. And still a lesson, but mat leave went on a ramble, and I'm so sorry.
That's exactly the energy I'm trying to take into this year, returning from my second child, because I spent so long thinking about how I can make this work. How can I I don't live in London either. I'm about an hour and a half away. So how can I possibly be at the school gates at 9 and at 3 and still have a job? And I was thinking all the ways I can quit. I was looking into doing a reflexology course. I was looking into all these different things I can do, because I was like, there's no way, I have to leave. And then I just thought in January, I'm going to try it. I've worked so hard to get to this point. I'm finally at the top of the ladder, I guess, of where I wanted to be. I've got to give it one last shot. And the way my approach to it is exactly what you say, Rachel. Like, I've got to set the rules. I've got to set the boundaries. I've got to say, I'm available now. I'm available for this. This is the work I want to do. If you want me, cool. And I'm cutting conversations short if they can't meet those criteria. And you've got to have belief in yourself. And a lot of what we were talking about earlier about perceptions from other people, I'm very, very bad at ignoring that, but I'm really trying to go into the energy of like, who cares if Jim in accounts thinks that I'm lazy? I don't care. You've just got to try and go into it with that attitude, because otherwise it will suck you up and it will kick you out and you won't be in the industry anymore.
I want to talk about coming back, right? Coming back from mat leave. And there are two different ways. Well, there are three different ways. I think broadly you can do that. Coming back into your own business, coming back into a job that existed before you left, and coming back and looking for a new job. Laura, I know that you are looking for a new job and you posted on LinkedIn and got quite a big response. How's that experience been, like having that really strict criteria and trying to find a role that matches that?
So at first I was having a few calls, and it all seemed to be with the big agencies. I won't name names, but within minutes. You should. I guess it's like the Publicis, the big ones. And it became very clear very early on that they are now very strictly on at least 3 days in the office. I know Publicis are now every Monday you have to be in the office, which is just, cruel in my opinion. I could talk for so long about remote working and working from home. I don't know if you want to go into that, but to me, like, it's the way forward, especially for mums, but for so many other people, so many other demographics. I guess the thing I found crazy was that I left for maternity leave and we were still very much in the COVID hangover of seeing the benefits of working from home. We were all still in that headset of like, what the hell are we doing? Why are we spending 5 hours a day on trains? What was wrong with us? This is great. But going in occasionally, because it's lovely. It's nice going in, having chats, having an after work pint and things like that. But I came back from maternity leave and all of a sudden everyone's like, oh no, we're back in the office now. Yeah, we love it. We're mandatory 3 days. And I was like, what the hell? Then I can't come back. You've basically made it impossible for me. So that was when I kind of realised I need to put something out there. I was in a really bad mental state, or I was furious with all of these recruiters who within minutes would be like, oh no, it's 3 days. Put something on LinkedIn, and it just went crazy. And the comment section was really depressing reading, because it was just full of women, exactly like who you had at the beginning, who was just saying I had to leave. And all of them were just saying, yeah, I had to leave advertising. It just wasn't a place for me. As soon as I had children, I went client side. I did this, I did that. And it was really reassuring to me that I wasn't alone, but equally it was depressing because, it's not just me. It's this is the reason. If you literally look at that comment section, this is the reason why I've never had a female role model, because this is what's been going on for decades. And I just feel like we came so close to potentially finding a little bit of an answer of how women and mums can stay in work. And then, in my opinion, not to really simplify it and generalise, but powerful men decided they didn't want it, and they changed the rules again because they didn't like all of us being at home. And I find that so infuriating. But light at the end of the tunnel is that I have since then found that there are agencies. You've just got to find them. I've had so many amazing contracts and offers come my way, and there's so many ways you can do it. Amsterdam agencies are always looking to hire and outsource with UK talent. Of course, that's all completely remote. And I'm now working for a really amazing, lovely small team called Sidley. Been working for them a few weeks. I can't big them up enough. They've been so supportive, so flexible. They treat me like an adult. Just get your work done, and that's cool. That's all that's expected of you. And I'm going in because I love going in. I love seeing the people, but it's not a requirement. And that to me is the way forward. Like you need to. I've been trying to work out what the answer is, and to me the answer is just compassion and treating people like adults, treating people like humans, and just being like, yeah, if you want to come in, lovely, we'd love to have you. And people will come in if you say that. Whereas, if you're going to force me to come in, then you're never going to get me working for you. And that's your loss because, I'm a nice person.
I think that leaving an industry in one kind of situation and coming back to something that feels very different is fairly common, especially over the last few years. We've seen a lot of industry change in kind of economically, but also obviously in society. There's been a lot of big changes. I want to read a story out from a listener, Amy Gettins, who left a role and went to return back to that role, and just a bit about her experience. So she said, I'd previously been the right-hand woman to the agency owner, pushing new business and working in an account direction capacity. It sounds like they were incredibly supportive. While she was trying to get pregnant, they were totally backing of her IVF, and that there were tears and hugs on her last day. But fast forward to trying to return to work, and it was a different story. I tried for 6 weeks to get a meeting to return to my role on a 3-day-a-week basis. The job was achievable in that time, in her opinion. In the first face-to-face meeting, I was told that they were creating a new biz development role. Amazing. They'd be in touch with a job spec and start back date probably quite soon, was the impression that she got. But it took almost 6 weeks before she had a meeting. She'd been fobbed off each time she tried to kind of get that in the calendar. And this time around, they said a HR representative will be there. The tone had changed, especially considering they don't have a HR department. So I guess red flags going up there. When she arrived, before she could even say hello, there was a lady in a meeting room, and essentially she'd said that the previous role was too hard for them to figure out. They were too busy. Some of the things that she's kind of mentioned that was said in that meeting were, we're not sure what we can give you to do now. Maybe we'll just give you jobs each day as you arrive, like cleaning. You can clear the sticky notes from the planning room. Really, we're looking to hire another you, but you before you were pregnant.
Oh my God.
Absolutely horrendous. And I wish that I could say that her story was an anomaly in our kind of submissions. Goosebumps actually just reading it out. So I guess I want to kind of hypothesize, what do we think some of the challenges are that people face when they're going back to work, and what do we think about that essentially?
That's disgusting. Let's start there. It's
Yeah.
actually vile. I cannot deal with this nonsense that's out there. This basically why I started my own agency, because I was just like, I don't believe that people actually give a flying shit about humans, and I don't understand when we became this way as a society. It's so horrible. But hypothesis, what was the question? Like how
The challenges that people might face right when they come back to work.
For me, it's like bigger than the workplace. It's the whole way that this system is set up for you to not feel okay having had a baby, to be different when you return. It's like you are expected to literally birth a human and come back literally hop, singing and jumping like you had never been there before. Like I saw this expression, I think it's called matrescence. and it's about embracing the whole journey of becoming a mother. So like the fact that you actually change as much as you giving birth changes in terms of like creating a baby, etc. And I feel like that's the best expression I've ever seen of like the journey that you actually go on. And for people to not get it and to then just literally sit there and like tell her to take out sticky notes is actually vile. Surely she can like see them or something. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I mean, what can we do to make it better? I don't know, because I've heard men say, oh God, you want to get talent in when they're in their 20s because you don't want to be paying for all these women's golf and have babies. Like, I've heard them say things like that. And so I don't know if even it's as small as just changing workplace behavior at this point. I think we're not set up to even, like, as a society, we just don't even know what's going on. I don't know. I don't know where to start. It just infuriates me.
Mate, that is just exactly how I feel. But I really think the answer is have more mums in senior leadership roles, so that there's empathy. Like, instead, what we're doing is we're all reverting. We're all just staying in our little houses. We're all going in-house. Or I just think of like my mum. She had quite a good office job. And yet, when we were both kids, she then stacked shelves in Sainsbury's on night shifts. And I just am like that. And yet she doesn't, even now, she wouldn't be like, oh, I had to do that. She just thinks, yeah, that's what I did. And that generation just did that. And I'm like, we shouldn't be doing that, because we're perpetuating it constantly. Because, yeah, it's the HR departments are full of either childless people or powerful men who just, aren't coming at it from our angle. And the only way to do it is to have people at the top like us who have got genuine empathy for the situation. But unfortunately, the cycle is turning and keep continually kicking us out, and it's never going to happen if that keeps going that way.
Yeah, totally.
What I would say is, if we are getting senior women who are having to go in-house to maintain their career, they should be mindful of the agencies that they're working with as well, so that they are able, when you are able to make decisions, be mindful of what the agency culture is that you're working with. Like, are they actually about humans? Are they really about like getting in under the skin of things? Because if to your point, if we're going to like go and sidestep to certain different lanes, then like try and make a change in those spaces that you are in, because that's the only way. You're only going to be able to uplift if you all are on the same path. Like, if you felt kicked out, then you need to go and help someone else that might be on the cusp of being kicked out of the senior table.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I just want to read out a little overview of some of the challenges that people submitted that they found and faced when they went back to work before we jump into a little bit of positivity. So lots of people finding that their role had gone a little bit like Amy, or the role had changed while they'd been away. So coming back and feeling a little bit redundant, or maybe not knowing their place in the team. In person is obviously a huge part of this conversation, and if you kind of abide by some of the in-person rules that are set out, then you're getting home late, you can't do nursery drop-off pickup, the expectation to work late or kind of do your workload after hours, so once the baby's gone to bed, so maybe that gets a little bit difficult to juggle, extreme tiredness and the impact that has on creativity and on hosting a meeting and leading a team, and not being able to talk about it, not maybe just in the studio, but on socials, and just generally being kind of told that you shouldn't be publicising that you've had a baby. So I want to play another voice note. This is from Harley and Kennedy from Rowdy Studio, who had a really positive experience coming back from mat leave, but it still has its issues.
I think that transition back from being someone who was very career focused to suddenly being a mum and then trying to blend the two things together is such an overwhelming process, and I found it extremely difficult. And I work in a very, very parent positive environment. It kind of hits on so many things to do with, consideration for people's time as a team, like recognizing that, not everyone wants to have to get stuck late and miss bedtime every night in the week. Having flexibility to just juggle, to know that you can kind of like your child decides that they want to insist on trying to put everything on themselves that morning, that causes you to be late for drop off, that causes you then to be slightly late for work, that you're not constantly having to justify or apologize for it, that you're just trusted to actually do that. And also just, this chronic sleep deprivation that I really struggle with, of coming back, integrating into a new team with new faces, trying to catch up on the year that's been out, and being seen, because I'm a creative director with Ready Studio, kind of being seen as the single source of truth, trying to get my head around that and try to navigate all the aspects of, being there for the team while creating boundaries that protect myself. And it's, just really, really hard. And I don't think people quite understand how long it takes maybe to settle, and just how universal an experience it actually is, even though that can be incredibly personal.
So what I'd love to ask on the back of that, and I'm so grateful for everyone being so honest and candid about their experiences, everyone that submitted, thank you very much. What's one thing that you think personally that you could do, or new mums coming back could do, that would help them have a slightly more positive experience in that process? So that mentioned there was like setting boundaries, but yeah, if you've both got something that you think would make that a nicer experience.
I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier about not perpetuating the stereotype that you need to come back and be 100%. We instead need to be vocal about our struggles. We instead need to be messaging HR, messaging the bosses, and making them realise that this is normal. Like me being a bit shit today is normal. And I think what a lot of them say is, I actually had someone say this in my comments on LinkedIn. Someone said, you being at the school gates 9 till 3 is bad for business, something along those lines. And it made me so angry, because I was like, I don't care if it's bad for business. Someone has to pick my child up. Like, that's not my fault. Like, school hours, I think, were probably also invented by a man, because who makes school hours 9 till 3? It's crazy. And yet office hours 9 till 6. It doesn't make any sense. And I think what frustrates me is, what that person you just had on is asking for are allowances that are probably bad for business. Like, she wants someone who is, she wants to be able to show up a little bit late because her kid's being a nightmare. She wants to be able to leave a little bit early, and a boss is going to look at that and be like, that's terrible for business. But equally, women in senior leadership is good for business. Women working for you is so good for business, not only in advertising from an insights perspective, and what we can bring to the table from being a mother and the insights that we've gained around motherhood and life, but equally just for women young women want to come into work with you. Like, they need to see that. They need to see that progression is possible. Like, I don't care if it's bad for business on a literal hour by hour basis and minute by minute basis of me sat at a desk and doing my work from that level, but you need to look at it more holistically and be like, no, what I'm bringing to the table is so much bigger than being sat at a desk 9 till 6 and doing your work for you on that schedule, because it's just such an outdated way of working and making money.
I literally have nothing to add. I think that's exactly how I feel about it. I agree.
Perfect.
There's something else I really want to say, sorry, that touches on...
Go for it.
I think you can tell, like, this brings a fire out in both of us. I feel like me and Rachel could talk about this all day. The other thing is, I really wish that people would understand the schedule and the routine of a mum. Like, let's just pick one out of the sky. Like, it changes every day, but cool. So you want me to fit 8 hours into a day, 8 hours of work. My child maybe wakes up at 6:30 if I'm lucky. Today it was 4. I was downstairs watching Peter Rabbit at 4 a.m. Cool, that's fine. So I couldn't fit any hours in before the day begun today. The battle to get both of them off to the school gates for 8:30, 9 o'clock is intense. It's insane. Probably all of us cry at some point, but we make it. And then we sit down at 9:30. That's if I'm not commuting. If I commute, then I'm going to make it in for 10:30 if I'm lucky. Get a load of work done, knuckle down, try and focus and try and forget the PTSD from the morning. We get through it, and then if I am having to pick my son up from school, then I have to be there at 3. I'm then going to pick him up, probably plonk him in front of the telly for an hour so that I can get a few more emails answered. Then you've got to start the dinner, bath, bed routine, which is all consuming, especially when you've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and people have way more. I don't even know how they do that. Even as a 7-month-old, Rachel, like, that's intense. And no matter what age they're at, no matter how many you have, it's a lot. eventually maybe you get them down, maybe you sit down for 8 o'clock, you got to make dinner, you maybe then sit down at 8:45, you need to have some form of relationship with your husband, some form of chat. It's then 9 o'clock, you know you've got a terrible night ahead of you, you maybe open your laptop to answer a few emails, and you go to bed at 10 to then be awake all night. Like, when is my time? When is the time for me to not go mental? Yeah, and yet I'm expected in that very small window where I am at work to be on top of my A game, and I just, again, I'm just whinging, and I know I'm just whinging, but it's barbaric. It's crazy what is expected of us. And in both of those situations, in both of those lives, the mum life and the worker life, you're expected to ignore and forget about what's going on behind the scenes. Like, you're getting doctor's appointments put in, you're getting nursery calls saying your kid's sick, you're getting all these other things going on, and it's just, the juggle is not possible.
Yeah, I mean, you've put that perfectly, and I don't think it makes sense unless you're in that journey. Again, what I would say is, like, on a like future thinking, my vision has always been with the agency to have a space where you could bring your kids and they could be playing, and it just be a space where everyone's free to do kind of like, so it feels like a bit of an extension of you, and it doesn't feel like, because I remember when I was younger, my mum worked full time as well, and like, she'd bring me into the office on a Saturday, and I used to love photocopying. I mean, the most dry thing ever, but like, her boss was a parent as well, so they understood that, you know, sometimes she had to finish early in the week, and it's like, and she was working on Saturday, so it's like, you know, parents really appreciate those things, and it's not that crazy for a child to be in an office. Like, we have dogs in the office, which I'd argue are more distracting. So, like, I think we just need to start approaching how we view workspaces and how we can look at these problems that are so real. We can't afford childcare if we're working here, there, and everywhere, and commuting and everything else. Like, is there a solution out there? I haven't seen it yet, but I'm hoping that I'll be nice and rich and I can create this amazing office space so you can all come and have loads of babies.
Oh, we'll check back in a year's time and find out the answers from you, Rachel. I appreciate that for you solving it for us. I really, I've got so much I still want to talk about, so I'm going to move us on a little bit. We talk about this as if it's a mum-only problem, and of course it takes two people to make a baby. If they wouldn't mind you sharing, how do you think your partners found it? How was their experience different to yours? We all work with a lot of dads, and it's not something that's actually talked about that often, what their experience is like.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. So he had 2 weeks off, which is ridiculous. He saved off his holidays, so he had 3.5 weeks. And I would say those 3.5 weeks were like blissful. He works really hard. His industry has absolutely zero respect at all for women in work. They all just don't work, and they definitely don't have their own businesses. So, I mean, that was, I think for him, really, really hard to go back. He is literally the most hands-on dad. Is more like, everyone, especially my mum, jokingly said if he could breastfeed, he'd be getting his tit out. That was my mum's bar. So for him to go back to work after 3.5 weeks, I know he hated it, and I know he found it super hard. And for me, I would have loved to have shared that load so early on. It was quite a lot for me to go from him being so hands-on for 3.5 weeks, which is like obviously nothing really in the grand scheme of things, but to then just being solely responsible and having to like goo goo gaga 24/7. And like, when he came back at home, like, we've always been quite anti-traditional in our roles and things, and like, you know, he very much cooks and cleans and does the laundry and stuff. Like, I'm not giving him a pat on the back, but apparently that's rare out here. And I feel like it actually made us regress into this like really trad role, which felt so sickening, and I felt so stifled by it. And we had to go on so many walks and talks about it, because I was just like, we didn't actually ever set this thing up for us to be like this trad 1950s family setup. Like, we got civilly partnered for a reason. We've come into this level on the same page, you know. Why am I now like cooking and cleaning for you and changing diapers while you're coming home and I'm like getting your dinner ready? It's literally vile. So we had lots of very, very deep combos as a unit because we hadn't actually had to like conform before then, and actually his workplace forced us to go into roles that didn't suit us. So, you know, we've changed things around quite a lot where we both have space to now show up the way that we need to, which does mean getting in childcare. But it also means that I don't feel like stifled into a role that I didn't actually set out to become. That wasn't ever what I wanted to be as a mother. I didn't want to be a full-time mum, and I know how bloody hard it is. And actually, I'm probably not good as a full-time mum because that is such a hard role and it is so taxing. And I get joy out of showing up and being my best self to my child. And that also means I have to be in a workplace and look after my other not as cute baby, my company.
I had a
Laura,
really
how did your
interesting
partner find it?
Yeah, I had a really interesting experience. So first child, exactly the same as you, Rachel. He had 2 weeks. He works in construction, so he leaves at 5 a.m. His alarm goes off at 4:45 every day, and then he could get back at 3-4 o'clock, but mostly he gets back at 6 p.m. So he's out 12-hour days. So yeah, that first 2 week that 2 weeks with my first was lovely but short. But then second one, his work again, crazy for construction because construction is very not progressive, like there's no perks. They emailed him to say that they were giving shared parental leave and he was going to get 6 months off, which blew my mind because I was shitting myself for that second baby. I didn't know how it was going to work. And it was the best 6 months for me, but for him it was so hard. And I don't think he'd mind. He's not going to listen to this, but he doesn't know how podcasts work, but but he went, I would say he probably went into like a little mini depression because he was waking up all day with no purpose. And I remember that exact feeling when I then remembered myself, when your brain has to literally be rewired from being on it, having a job, having things to do, having responsibilities, having a schedule, to then waking up and your 4-year-old being like, I've done a poo, come wipe my bum. And then your newborn being sick all over you. And that's all he did all day for 6 months, and he got really fed up. He got really low, and he's very, very progressive. We have a really amazing, we're a really great team, and I couldn't ask for more from him. But still, it was really interesting to see how it affected him, and it almost just, I don't want to perpetuate this stereotype, but it almost made you realise that probably biologically there is a reason why the women have gone into this role, because he just couldn't cope with that lack of purpose. And I like I say, I don't know if you had the same thing, Rachel, but I do remember when that moment your brain rewires and the honeymoon period has gone off and you're maybe like at month 3 or 4 and you're like, wow, this is boring, I'm watching This Morning in my dressing gown again, which at the beginning is wonderful, best thing ever, but by month 4 you're gone a bit mad because that baby's given you nothing back. And yeah, it was really interesting, and it really helped us actually as a team, for him to be like, oh wow, that's what you're going through every day. That's why when I come home from work, you're like, what have you done today? Who have you seen? Who have you talked to? What about this? Should we do this? How can we go on holiday? Because he gets it, like, you've gone a bit stir crazy. So yeah, I found that really, really beneficial for us. But yeah, I think for him it was a different story.
It's awesome. Not awesome, but it's cool to hear 2 really different experiences. I'm going to move us on just because there's a couple more questions that I want to ask. To talk a little bit about progression. So according to Creative Equals, 12% of creative directors are women. I don't think it takes a genius to know that these issues that we talked about today are a huge contributing factor to that. So I wanted to ask you a very blunt question, if you don't mind. How has having children impacted your career?
That stat doesn't shock me, the 12%. And I think I'd love to know the stat if you broke it down and added race to it as well, because obviously intersectionality will definitely play a hand in that. I reckon it's probably like 1% of Black females and mothers.
If not less. Yeah.
If not less. Like, how's it affected me? I am in a different situation. I think I would be feeling very different if this wasn't my own company. And like, having spoken to people who are working for other people, I know their situation has massively been hindered having kids. I haven't let it hinder me. And that is back to the very beginning point of being like, putting on a brave face, marching on through and pushing on, and not maybe giving myself enough time to breathe in that as well. So it's hindered me probably from a like draining mental headspace type thing, but like business wise, it actually hasn't. And that is very different because I have my own company. I know that's not the case in other situations.
Long may that continue. Laura, how about you? Do you think that it has impacted your career, having children?
Oh yeah, big time. It's impacted my ambition. It's impacted, I would say, like the level of ideas I can come up with. It takes me longer. I'm more stifled. But actually, saying that, my first was born during COVID, so I was back at work after a few months with him because I was freelance, but it was working from home and it was fine. But I would have to get an 8-hour day done in a 2-hour nap. So I'm actually now the fastest copywriter you'll ever meet. I can write a script in an hour. So yeah, in that way, it has made me incredibly efficient. Yeah, really good at my job in certain ways. But yeah, brain space, words have dropped out of my head and they don't exist anymore, which isn't great for a copywriter. Baby brain is real. But yeah, I think, yeah, it's impacted me a lot.
Wouldn't you say that? Oh, sorry, I was just going to say to you, wouldn't you say that your brain has almost like cut out the noise and actually able to like refine exactly what you need to get done at a really rapid speed? So like all the faff, that's one thing you realize, like the faff that you actually spend time being like, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? And you're like, this is the answer. Let's keep it moving. We don't have time for this energy. And I think actually,
totally agree.
yeah, that's like a positive from the mum brain, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. Because you haven't got time. You haven't got time for people to permeate over such pointless things. I'm like, cool, have we got an answer? Let's go. What's the action? I completely agree. But yeah, I think equally I can look at a bit of paper for about 20 minutes and not really know what I said.
Awesome. I want to talk briefly about how all of this actually impacts all women, because we actually heard from a lot of women who aren't mothers. I'm just going to play a voice note from Mary Vertelfo.
Well, I just went to a conference, and not 3 minutes in, I had a conversation with someone right when I walked in the door, and they said, you're in tech. Have you considered freezing your eggs? And I was like, wow, okay, extremely personal, super inappropriate. Later on, they had a panel where they asked a suite of extremely talented girl boss women if they were all choosing to have children in the future and what they were going to do about their careers.
So I think that this is actually a little more common than we would expect. Women who have either chosen not to have children or can't have children or want to have children maybe a little bit later in life, this perception of pregnancy and motherhood still being a detriment to their career, even though it's not something that they're actively doing in that moment. So I guess that I'm not really sure what the question is here. I kind of just wanted to acknowledge the people that are still being kind of under this umbrella, but maybe aren't actually having the same experience as the mothers in our industry. Don't know if you guys have got any thoughts on that.
Well, it kind of just goes back to the whole society makeup of being so patriarchal that no matter what you try and do as a woman, you're penalised. So that's fun for us all, isn't it? And that's why you see so many senior women freelancing, consulting, and actually in times like recession, they're either the people that do really well or don't. And it's like, you're just not really set up to be able to succeed whatever you do. And I find that so frustrating because you are literally going against all the odds and still succeeding, and yet you still get kicked in the face. And I just think that there needs to be some more understanding from those that have the power to make the decisions around the real knock-on effect and the impacts of actually forgetting that there is life after 30, essentially, because that's when they start pegging you with like, are you egg freezing, are you married, when are you gonna, all that chat starts coming out. And I think that as an industry we are just so obsessed with youth, and we don't see the value of actual age and experience, and it's just so debilitating, unless you're a man, that is, and you can kind of get away with it. I still don't think they're that inclusive for men actually that are older, but like we do need to just reform the way that we think. And I think in general, as creatives going out into the world, if we're creating content that the whole world needs to consume, it's wild that we think only like a certain demographic can deliver that work. It actually baffles me that we think everyone should be London based, young, cool, middle class, and like deliver this, that, and the other. Like, it's so stupid. And I hoped we had learnt a lesson in 2020, but it seems that we've gone exactly back to how it was, and everyone's forced in the office, and we're getting briefs at the last minute, and there's no time to think, and everyone looks the same in the same meeting rooms. It's so boring. Change it up if you have the power to do so. That's my thoughts and feelings towards that.
Yeah, very well said. Completely agree. There's something that I carry a lot of guilt as a mum, because I know I'm not delivering. I know that I'm asking other people to pick up the slack, and unfortunately it is a lot of those peers who are equally senior women who maybe don't have the kids, and I know that's not fair. So yeah, that inequality really frustrates me, and I hate that it ends up being almost me versus her, because I get that I have friends. I have an incredibly successful head of strategy, one of my best mates, and yeah, she's openly said like she finds it really hard that because she's not had kids, she is the one who is asked to do the late calls, to pick up the slack. She's the one that has to be pulling the deck together at the last minute because the mum isn't available, and that's not fair. But I don't know what the answer is, which is why it's so sad, because I think what Rachel said is really true. If you're a client, one of the problems is that clients still have crazy turnarounds. They want us to do a pitch in a week. They want us to deliver something, because they've not been organised enough, and it needs to be turned around with deadlines that aren't people focused, deadlines that don't take us into account, that just see us as the agency that you're paying good money to. But please see that in that agency are mums, are women, are neurodivergent people, are people from so many different situations, and they're just seeing their timelines rather than the people.
Amazing answers, both of you. Thank you. I want to end on some positivity for the poor people listening who are just about to go on mat leave, or maybe they're in the trenches, maybe they're listening to this at 3:00 during the night feed, and I'm sorry if we've been a little bit doom and gloom here today. So let's have... that's the nature of the beast, I'm afraid. But let's have, if you could both give a little bit of kind of advice, or a little bit of positivity to those new parents that might be listening, or people who are considering starting a family.
Mine would be, I'm sorry, like this is the best time of my life, without a doubt. And the thing I always say is, being a mum or having kids is a paradox. They are the light of my life, but they are responsible for my darkest moments. And that is the case with everything. I've never felt like my life has more purpose, yet it's never been more boring at times. And there's so many contrasts. So yeah, just be prepared for life to go from, I guess, kind of a flat line to the biggest peaks and the biggest troughs you've ever experienced. But my advice would be, set boundaries, have confidence in yourself. Since that LinkedIn post, I came off an interview 2 minutes before joining this podcast call, because, and I hate to say it, but I'm being the diversity tick box for a lot of people now. Like, my speciality is sports marketing. Women, CDs in sports marketing don't exist, and I know I'm coming at it still from a position of privilege, because I'm a white woman in sports marketing, which I can imagine is way more privileged than so many other demographics. But I'm now just leaning into it. I'm owning it. Like, cool, you want me to be a tick box? Fine. Like, I'm not offended by it. Like, show me what you got. And I've got so many options, and it's really exciting. So I think the industry is realizing that clients want to see women on Zoom calls, in meetings, and they're starting to shit themselves that all they are is a sausage fest at the end of the call and it's not looking good. So yeah, take the calls, be vocal about it. Like putting that post on LinkedIn where I was a bit of an angry mum actually has worked really massively in my favour. I've had so many opportunities off the back of it. So yeah, don't be afraid to speak your mind. Don't be afraid to be really vocal about what's going on in your life and who you are and what you're capable of and what you can bring to the table.
Nice.
I don't think I could say anything better than that. 100%, I agree. I use LinkedIn quite a lot, and I think for me, it's been quite, I don't know, like cleansing almost, because I just think that in terms of professional, being a woman, being a black woman, being a founder, all the things that shouldn't make sense on paper because of all of the unconscious bias that goes on in this world, I am, as you said, Laura, just leaning into every single one of them. And I'm just like, this is me. You need to get over it if you don't like it, because I'm not changing. And that is, I think, partly powerful from owning my own business, but also from being a mum, that I don't actually give a shit what you think of me. I'm absolutely over it. I don't have the headspace to care. So what you see is what you get. I'm completely proud of what I've achieved, and I think you should be as well. It's no easy thing to be able to raise the next generation of humans. So give yourself a pat on the back, take a break, and be unapologetically yourself, because that's all you can ever be.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad I asked that question. That was incredibly uplifting. I think we needed a bit of that. And I think there's a really nice point about the two of you essentially raising the next generation of our creative directors. So thanks for that. If this is the two of you sleep deprived, I'd hate to see what you're like on 8 hours, because you've been absolutely amazing. I'm definitely going to wrap it there because I know we've been chatting for ages. If you listen to us all the way to here, make sure you go and follow Rachel and Laura over on their platforms and let them be the visibility that we need of mums in the industry. And thank you both so much.
Thank you so much for having us.